Welcome back to the channel and the world's smallest off-road wreck. And today, we gotta do 4-link things, starting with cleaning this axle up. New idea. Alright, this will go out. Well, this is gonna take a little longer than I thought, so let's cue the time lapse. So we got this thing cleaned up pretty good, but I just remembered that I also am gonna be doing full hydraulic double-ended steering ram up front, which means gotta get rid of this bad boy too. So when I thought I was done cutting, I'm not done cutting. So let's get to cutting. What a mess, look at that. That's some metal dust. Better. That's right, folks. Got me a new jet. If you're new to the channel, this is my poor man's plumb bob. So I got the center of the frame marked here and the center of the axle marked here. So I'm just going to wrap this so I know that it's centered. The old Plumb Bob's lifestyle here. The center is actually not here, it's right here. So we need to move this axle this way just a little bit. That worked out perfect. So we now have our plumb bob centered to our axle. We have the axle pretty darn straight here. I want to just line it up with this tube because we know this tube's straight. That will give us a good starting point for our control arm. Now, when you're building a 4-link, you really want to build it at full bump, meaning all the way down. Now, I've already functioned this all the way down at full bump, so I know where I want it to be. I now have it kind of sitting right at ride height, but this is going to give me my lower control arm points, which is what I want to work on right now. We got our entire 4-link kit from Barnes 4-wheel drive. This is their generic, like, one size fits all 4-link kit. Now, if you're doing a standard 4-link, in fact, if Matt was just using this in Sand Hollow, it would be just fine to weld this on the bottom of the frame, and it wouldn't matter that this is the hang down point. Because this is gonna go on side-by-side trails, and there might be sticks, there might be rocks, who knows where they might take it. I want the bottom to be flat bellied, so I want the bottom of this to be the bottom of those plates. So the nice thing about Barnes 4-wheel drive is everything is laser cut and etched, and there's these tiny little notches right there that actually tell you how to set this thing in. So if you were trying to figure out how that mounts, that's how you'd weld that up. Pretty easy. And you guys know I use Barnes 4-wheel drive for all kinds of my projects out here, and that's why I got you a discount code. Colt builds it, 10% off. What I'm probably gonna do is something like this, but I'm gonna cut this back and move it more towards the frame. That way we can plate this base out and we can gusset this up into the frame as well. But I'm not only looking at the flat of the frame, I'm looking flat to the axle tube. I want my lower links to be as flat as possible, and I also want them to come out a little bit to the axle. So this is gonna get me where I need to line this up, coming out here. Obviously we're gonna mount our control arm here. We gotta make sure it's gonna clear our tire. Most importantly, we wanna make sure that the control arm's flat and that our tire won't contact the arm. Those are our two majors. And I know I've talked about it in multiple 4-link videos before. Your lowers need a little bit of triangulation, your uppers need a lot of triangulation. And I get asked all the time, and just recently, why I don't want to put my lowers inside the center of the frame. And the reason is, I've found that when I hit rocks, I want the rock to ride the control arm and then goes right across the frame. If that control arm's inside the frame, then I have this dead space right here, where if a rock comes in here, it gets stuck in this area. We don't want any rocks stuck in this area. Perfect. So I had never seen these before, but Harbor Freight came out with their own Sharpie, or permanent marker. They probably can't use the word Sharpie, but if it works and it's cheaper, we'll find out. An anti-roll ridge. That's neat. I think that's for a hard hat. What the heck is it? Now when it comes to doing tube work, And for link work, which is technically still tube work, blue painter's tape can be your friend. At least gives me the angle of the dangle. We now know how our lower control arms are gonna sit. We got them kind of kicked out in this direction, so they should look pretty good. We'll just tack it in. We'll get a couple measurements off of our frame that we've already cut straight and just tack each side in. Should in theory be pretty good for a starting point anyway. With our frame side tacked in, we can now use our axle side mounts. Now, like I said, I'm coming in just a little bit, giving it just a little bit of angle, more so it'll clear the tire, but we're gonna come in and I'm gonna turn this like this. So I need to actually trim this out just a little bit, not a lot, but a little. I think that's pretty good eyeball. What do you guys think? Whoop, whoop. Yeah, you go. Would you look at that?
Just look at it.
Just look at it. Perfect. Ah, holy crap, that shocked me good. That hurt. Oh, hot dog, that hurt. Wow. Oh, that's why, because it's not on the... Oh, I arced myself. The ground wasn't on the axle. Whew, I was the arc between it. Zigga-digga-digga. All right. So we got this side tacked in, going straight, and then we got this side tacked in, going straight. I also double checked the angle this way and the angle of the brackets this way. So now that we've checked everything, we know it's pretty true. I'm gonna give it a quick tape measure. I just wanna see how close my eyeballed axle height is. Also, one of the other things I did so that nothing moved was put a jack under the pinion there. That way nothing can walk around on us or anything like that. All right, so I just measured my lower control arm. It's 33 inches. Now here's the funny part. These two up top are the rears. The two heavy duty ones that are underneath there are the fronts. And guess what that center to center is? Yeah, 33 inches. So I think we might just use those because, I mean, why make another set when we have a set? And if Matt ever wants to get rid of aluminum and go to steel, then he can. Y'all like my tape? Before I do the uppers, I want to get the lowers mounted, and I don't really want to set them in there with just tack. So I want to go ahead and I'm just going to weld the lowers in. I know that's where I want it to be. If for some reason our uppers get in the way of our lowers, then I'll chop into the frame here and bring the uppers up. So I'm not really worried about that. I just want to get these in, and then that way we actually have something holding this axle in when we do our upper stuff. See if I can just stop shocking myself again. Because I used my Barnes brackets, which just made it easier for like widths and dimensions and stuff, I just had to build some supports real quick. So that's what these are, just tacked in over here. This side's welded in. That's just gonna give it a little extra strength, a little extra support. It probably doesn't need it, but I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. You know that thing? So even though I have triangulation at the lowers, we still got to get our uppers to make sure the axle doesn't move side to side. That's why it looks good, but you can see here we're about an inch out of the center line. So here's my center line mark. I'm gonna pick the axle up and just squeeze it over a little. Perfect. Well, the irony of the lowers working so good, I figured might as well see if the uppers work, and they happen to work too. So this is about where I want to set this. There's my center mark for that, and that's where that's going to be sitting outside the frame. So to show you how I make this, it's really simple. I went from the edge of this tube out to where the heim, the center of the heim is. That was 1.25 inches with it gapped away from the tube, so that I know 1.25 inches is good enough for that inside mount. These are capped pieces here for extra strength. That cap is 2 3/8, so that's a circle of 2 3/8 across, basically here. And we have 1.25 inches from the inside of the center of the tube to there, and it's a 1/2 inch hole, which I'll make it just a little bit bigger. That way the bolt goes through it, because if you torch something, you torch a circle, and you're right on the money, it's really hard. You can't really drill it out. You're gonna have to take a die grinder and clean it out. But if you just torch it just a skosh bigger than your bolt hole size, it usually works out good every time.
60% of the time, it works every time.
That doesn't make sense.
So right here, I've made my tab. All I need to do from this point is make my 2 3/8 cutout. Here's the tube that it would mount on, and there's the piece. Then after I make it, I throw it on a thumb drive and I cut it out. Now you see a lot of shops, they'll have their laptop in their shop. My shop is too dirty. I have enough issues with electronics. The last thing I want to do is put it in here and destroy it, guaranteed, no matter what. And there it is. All right, so we have the one control arm bracket that came from Barnes 4-wheel drive. And we have this one right here that I made, and all I'm doing is just making sure that the bolt is straight, and that's 2 inches there. So now I know I need to make this same bracket, but 2 inches from the center of the hole to the edge of the tube. Pretty simple. Thank you, Shanna.
You're welcome.
You guys like that? Before I go inside and cut that, I do want to explain a few things. Now, one of the things I get asked all the time is, what are the lengths of your control arms? Now, I had to modify my control arms a bunch to make this thing work on my buggy, and it's no different with this. Your lower control arms, whatever length they are from center bolt to center bolt, your upper control arms should be at least 80% that length. What that means, when I put my rig together, I had to shorten those when I picked it up. My lower lengths are now 33 inches. My upper lengths here are 26.5 inches, so they are exactly 80% of the lower. Like I said, that's the minimum. If I had more room, I would probably move it back even more, but I'm kind of out of room for everything to clear if I make my upper control arms any longer. So now I've shown you what angles you need your control arms up top. Let's talk about how they need to look from the side. So like I said, you want your lower control arm to be as flat as possible, and you want your upper control arm to go from the frame side up to the axle. What that's going to do is that's going to allow your pinion to pretty much not move. Like, it's going to keep your pinion at a straight angle through your entire flex, which in turn keeps your steering caster where it's supposed to be, which is what you want. So if you look at numbers of a Heim joint, a 3/4 Heim would be strong enough for a lower control arm going vertical, but the second you take a side load to it, that's when they fail. That's the reason why I'm a big proponent, if you're going to go with Heims for your links, that you run 1.25 inches for your lower stuff. Now, your uppers shouldn't be taking side load hits, because they should be up out of the way, not getting smashed into rocks. You can get away with 7/8 or 3/4 Heims. So if you follow that motto, odds are your 4-link's going to work really good. All right, so we got our other side made. We got both pieces put together. We're ready to tack it up. I'm going to have Shanna hold that in, and I'm going to do this side first. That way I got the ground on the axle, so I don't end up electrocuting myself like I did last time. All right, so at this point, before I even put the other side on, I just want to function the suspension and make sure everything's gonna clear, which that's basically full bump right there, and we look really, really good. That's why I set this alternator back in, so I know like that's as low as it'll ever sit. It's probably gonna more or less sit up here, but at its lowest, it'll be right there. I just wanted to make sure our lower control arm wasn't gonna hit. And with that being said, take a quick measurement here, 9 3/4. Right height-ish. That's 13.5. That's about perfect. We now have all 4 control arms tacked on. Well, the lowers are actually welded in good. So the uppers are tacked on. We measured center line over, so everything's straight here. We measured the angles this way. You can see that this is much lower coming down to the frame here. The control arm is nice and flat. This is close to ride height. We're looking really good, but I do need to get some support on that. The reason I made these little supports here is that's going to keep these plates separated for this control arm, and that way I know when I go to take this axle off and burn all that in, it's not going to warp that tab in, because the last thing we need is tabs warped in. So while I have the hymen here, I'm just gonna go ahead and tack these ends. That's gonna keep the separation on this plate like it needs. Then I can go ahead and pull the hymen out, finish welding this up. I'm gonna weld underneath and then on the back side.
Hey, guess what?
What's up?
What did the baby corn say to mom corn?
I popped you.
Where's popcorn?
Where's popcorn? All right, we got it bolted up. I'm gonna have Shanna let it down, and I'll tell you when. We're just gonna get it right up to the edge of this alternator, which is... stop. Come up just a little. That right there is full bump. Now the alternator probably won't be that far out because that's maxed, and it probably won't even be anywhere near that. It'll probably be up quite a bit. But just in case something gets weird, that is our full bump spot. So you can see here, our lower control arm is actually up to the axle. Our uppers is still going way up, and our pinion is actually rolled down just a little bit, but that's fine because it's closer to the transfer case output. Now our knuckles are kicked all the way back because this is exactly what I said. Full bump. When you're setting up a steer axle, you always want caster. Now I normally shoot from anywhere to 6 to 12 degrees of caster. I want it kicking back. That's gonna help it return to center. It's gonna help it drive better too. If the straighter it is, the more it's gonna chase the road. And if you have it forward at all, it's really gonna chase the road. It's gonna chase every little bump. Now at full bump here, we're 9 3/4 inches to the center of the tube. So we got 9 1/2 inches at full bump. We're gonna run 12-inch shocks, which means we're gonna have 12 inches of droop. So now we wanna function it all the way up and get that 12 inches. Stop. Whoa, come down just a little bit. Stop. That's it. All right, that is full droop. Now with the control arms now aimed down, this is where having your uppers as high as possible, because this would have just kept it square. But with them aimed down, it did roll the axle a little bit, which isn't gonna hurt us because that brings the pinion angle up again. And our steering, it's hard to see, but our steering is still kicked back. So it's not zero, which is good. Basically saying no matter if it's full droop or all the way compressed, we're gonna be good. If you don't have a lift to do this, you can do it the way I always used to do it, and that's with one of these. Just get yourself an engine hoist. They're pretty cheap at Harbor Freight. Chuck it on there, pick it up and down, pick up each axle. You can work each side, see what is in the way. Now we're not too worried about that right now because we have to set up for shocks and a hood, and I gotta do a lot of tube work, and well, plus we got the rear to do. But this is something very obtainable to do at your house. You don't have to hire something like this out. You can do it yourself. It's not as complicated as the internet wants you to believe. Stop. So now we're back at ride height. Our lower links are flat. Our upper links are going up to the axle from the frame. We have good triangulation, more so with the uppers, minimal with the lowers. Doesn't have to be crazy, just enough to keep the axle straight. You can see the axle stayed straight there. We have good caster all the way through the entire cycle. Ideally, if I was going full custom buggy, I would have this upper link all the way back here to the corner of a tube chassis, but well, we don't have it. And a lot of it was really easy to do with parts that we could already get from Barnes 4-wheel drive, which is probably what we're gonna use all of for the rear, because there's nothing in the way back there. Center line. Oh yeah. Well, it's been a long day. I'm tired. She's tired. We appreciate you guys watching. You have all the numbers now, so if you need to mimic this exactly, you can. So no excuses. Thanks for watching.
I want to know, what's your guys' favorite part of our videos?
There's one other thing I forgot to mention. These lower control arms are both right-hand thread. Now, why I like that for a lower control arm for rock crawling is if you hit that on a rock and it somehow breaks it loose from the jam nut, you're never gonna lose a control arm. It's gonna just stay there. Little secret for those that stayed till the end. You're welcome.